भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैर्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितै यदायुः स्वस्ति नः इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नः तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु ओम शांति शांति शांति. So the topic for today's discussion is the relevance of Upanishads in modern life. So before we go into the details of the Upanishads, let's try and understand what the word Upanishad actually mean. So the etymological meaning of Upanishads itself is quite fascinating. So Upanishads, the word Upanishad can be separated into Upari and Nishadayati. So what that means is, Upari means that which elevates us, that which mentally elevates us is Upanishads. So the root word Upa not only means up, but it also means getting close to. So the higher we elevate ourselves, from our intellectual perspective, the closer we get to God. So that is also a sense of what Upanishads actually mean. So how do we get closer to God? By knowing about Him, by gaining knowledge about Him. So how do we gain knowledge? We sit close to a guru. As a student, we sit close to a guru and read the Shastras. So that also is the meaning of the word Upanishads. So that which mentally elevates us and takes us close to God, and that which is used to learn about God by sitting close to a guru, in essence, is the meaning of the word Upanishads. So Upanishads form the part of the Vedas. Vedas by definition are infinite. Anantavai Vedaha, as the Shastras define the Vedas. So in that sense, Upanishads are also infinite. But as we know, over eons, much of the Vedic knowledge, much of Vedic philosophy was lost. And at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, in fact, a significant proportion of Vedic literature and Vedic lore was lost. So at that point, Vishnu, the supreme God himself, incarnates as Vedavyasa to compile the Vedas. Of whatever Vedas that was available or left at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, so Vedavyasa compiled the Vedas for the benefit of mankind for future generations to come. So Vedavyasa basically compiled and divided the Vedas into 4 parts and distributed these to his disciples. So the 4 Vedas are Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda and Atharvana Veda that were given to his disciples, and the families that came down from individual rishis preserved a portion of the Vedas. And that is how Vedas have been preserved as of today. Now Vedas, each portion of the Vedas is again divided into 4 parts. You have the Samhita portion, the Brahmana portions, the Aranyaka portion and the Upanishad portions. So the Upanishads form a part of the Vedas. So as I said before, technically if the Vedas are infinite, then the number of Upanishads that must be available must also be infinite. But we have about 108 or so Upanishads that are currently available for our studies. And from the 5th to the 6th century AD, about 10 Upanishads have actually taken predominance with regards to Indian philosophical transactions. This is largely due to Sankaracharya, who appeared in the 6th century, who focused on the 10 principal Upanishads to put forth his philosophy of existence. Ramanujacharya, who came in the 10th century, did not give us any commentaries on the Upanishads. However, he has done a work called Vedartha Sangraha, where he gives an exposition of the various Upanishads and their teachings in his work. Srimad Acharya or Madhvacharya has done 10 works, 10 bhashyas on the 10 principal Upanishads. So these Upanishads, as I told you before, form a part of the each Vedas. So if you take Rig Veda, for example, the primary Upanishad of Rig Veda is Maha-Aitareya. Maha-Aitareya is the principal Upanishad of the Rig Veda. Then if you take Yajurveda, there are two sub-branches within the Yajurveda. They have the Shukla Yajurveda and you have the Krishna Yajurveda. So the two Upanishads that come in Krishna Yajurveda is Taittiriya Upanishad and Kataka Upanishad, also known as Katha Upanishad. Then you have Shukla Yajurveda, and within the Shukla Yajurveda, you have two primary Upanishads, Ishavasya Upanishad and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Then if you go to Samaveda, there are two principal Upanishads within the Samaveda. One is called the Chandogya Upanishad, which is quite popular. And then you have Talavakara Upanishad, also known as Keno Upanishad. Then you have the Atharvana Veda, where you have three principal Upanishads. The Atharvana Upanishad, also called as Mundaka Upanishad. Then you have Mandukya Upanishad. Then you have Shatprashna Upanishads. So these are the 10 principal Upanishads that Srimad Acharya comments quite extensively in his bhashyas. Acharya also in his various works also cites Upanishads such as Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So Shvetashvatara Upanishad, although it is not part of the 10 principal Upanishads, it is part of the Krishna Yajurveda. And it is a very important Upanishad that Acharya cites quite frequently. And then you have other Upanishads such as Kaushatiki Upanishad. Kaushatiki Upanishad is part of the Rig Veda. And again, Acharya cites quite generously from this. And he also cites from Mahanarayana Upanishad. Mahanarayana Upanishad is part of the Atharvana Veda. Then you have Atharvashika Upanishad. Then you have Anunarayana Upanishad. So there are very many Upanishads from which Srimad Acharya cites in his works. But we have 10 principal Upanishads as I told you before. And for the purpose of today's discussions and lecture, I'm going to primarily focus on the bhashyas of Srimad Acharya on Upanishads and what they tell us and how they are relevant to the modern society. So you may ask, Srimad Acharya appeared on this planet in 1239. So that's about 12th century. And Shankaracharya did a bhashya in the 6th century. Upanishads as we have it have come down to us from thousands of years ago. So these are parts of texts that have been written or come down to us, say 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 years ago. So you might ask, what on earth is the relevance of the Upanishads in the modern times? How is something that was composed thousands of years ago is relevant to the 21st century? So this is a question that most youngsters, or at least people of modern times who have a very rational system of thought, who attribute logic in their transactions in life, ask these questions as to what is the relevance of Upanishads and how is it going to make my life any better. This is exactly what the question that appeared in Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, as you know, is the essence of the Upanishads and the Vedas. The philosophy, the core essence of these philosophies are summarized in Bhagavatam. So Parikshit Maharaj, when he knew that he was going to die within 7 days, he goes to Naimisharanya and Sukha Muni appears there, and Parikshit asks Sukha Muni this question. Dear Sukha, what is it that I have to do within 7 days before I die? What is it that I need to know before I die? Is what Parikshit asked Sukha. Sukha at that point said, variyan eshate prashnaha. Shrotavyadini Rajendra nrunam santi sahasrasha. Apashyatam atmatattvam gruheshu gruhamedinam. Nidraya hruyate naktam vyavayena cha vavayaha. Divacha arteshaya rajan kutumba baranenava. Is what Sukamuni told Parikshit. So what does that mean? He said, Variyaneshate prashnaha. Parikshit, you've asked a great question. The man of our times has no time to ask these questions. They have thousands of issues to discuss. They have thousands of issues to think about in their mundane lives. So in modern times, we have the TV, we have the internet, we have the social media, we have the newspapers and TV. So we do not have time to ask and think about these questions. We have no time to think about God. Apashyatam atmatattvam. And he asks, why? See, human life, let's say we live for 100 years. Half our human lives we are wasting in sleep. Nidraya hruyate naktam. Or in night time, we are engaging ourselves in various activities. In modern times, that would be equivalent to going to pubs and nightclubs and movies and whatnot. And during the daytime, what's happening? Divacha arteshaya rajan. What are we doing during the daytime? We are after wealth. We are working to earn money, to buy things, so that we think if we buy a house, or we buy new things for our house, we upgrade our garden, we upgrade our TV, and that is what we are doing in the mornings when we go to work. So divacha arteshaya rajan, or what we are doing, kutumba baranenava. We are so engaged in the pressures and tribulations of running our families. So friends, I'm going to ask you this question. What Sukamuni told Parikshit 5,000 years ago and now, is our lives at this point of time any different from what Sukha had described 5,000 years ago? I think it is no difference whatsoever. If anything, it has been magnified 10 times, 100 times, or even, dare I say, 1,000 times more than what it used to be 5,000 years ago. So I would actually submit what the Upanishads are talking about is very, very relevant today. For a modern man, for a modern thinking man, rational man, and we claim ourselves to be educated souls, we still are not totally convinced that the musings of the ancients has got any relevance to modern society. I want to take you to Atharvana Upanishad, where there is a discussion between Saunaka and Angirasa Rishi. So Angirasa gives a reality check on Saunaka. And he says, you know what, Saunaka, what the society is at this point of time and how the man is living at this point of time? Let me give you an illustration of what the situation is what Angirasa is saying. Saunaka, and he says, Avidyayam antare muhyamanaha swayam dhiraha panditam manyamanaha janganyamanaha pariyanti mudaha ande naiva niyama yata andaha, is what Angirasa is telling Saunaka. So what is he saying? You know what? The modern man, he thinks he knows everything. But actually, he is actually sitting in the middle of a fence called ignorance. He surrounded himself around a fence called ignorance. He has assumed that all the knowledge of the material world that he has gained through his progress is going to give him security and salvation. If anything, it is the contrary. He has actually got himself into this fence of ignorance. And he is assuming himself that he is the greatest knowledgeable man. Swayam dhiraha, panditam manyamanaha. He thinks himself to be the most enlightened human being. But actually, you know what has happened to him? Despite him covering himself in this fence, he is actually slipping himself. He is actually sliding into the lowest levels of existence. As what Angirasa says, Janganyamanaha Pariyanti Mudaha. So they are all idiots going down, sliding themselves in a vicious cycle of lowest levels of human existence. And I would actually challenge you, is our lives, is our modern life at this point of time, does it not resonate with what Angirasa is actually saying, Shaunaka? In fact, Angirasa finishes off saying, Ande naiva niyama yata andaha. That is the society at this point of time. So what is happening? We have blind leaders who do not know where they are heading, who do not know what their purpose is. And then there are all these blind men who are following this blind leader, and they are all falling into a deep pit. Is the illustration that Angirasa is giving to Saunaka. And again, to me it feels like the direction in which the society is progressing, that we fit into that category quite elegantly as to what Angirasa has actually said, Saunaka. So again, I want to bring you back to this idea that the musings of the ancient rishis was not some irrelevant discussion that was happening in a cave, but it had huge reasoning behind it, a lot of scientific thinking behind it to help us progress in our lives. What the Upanishads here is actually asking us is, ask the bigger questions in life. The purpose of the Upanishads is to seek answers to bigger questions in life, not mundane things in life. And that is what the Upanishads here wants you to think about. In one of the beautiful Upanishads, okay, Shvetashvatara Upanishads, I want to take you to Shvetashvatara Upanishad. The very first verse of Shvetashvatara Upanishad, where the Shvetashvatara Rishi is asking this question, existential questions. He starts off his philosophical discourse by asking existential questions. He says, Brahmavadino vadanti, kim karanam brahma, kutasmajata, jivamakema, adhishtitaha kena sukha itareshu vartamahe brahmavido vyavastam. So what is he saying? Kim karanam. What is the origination of this universe? Who is responsible for this creation? That is the first question that Shvetashvatara is asking. Kim karanam? Is it Brahma? Kutasma jata. Where did I come from? How did I come into being? How did I come into this world as a living being? Jiva makena. What is this life? What is the meaning of all this? I'm getting up in the morning, going to work, coming back. Days are passing. Every time the sun sets, one day is gone, then the sun rises, another day comes, and I'm just carrying on this journey through this life. What is this? Jiva makena. Kvacha sampratishta. What is my destination? What is my final place of rest? Where am I heading to? Adhishtitaha kena sukha itareshu vartamahe brahmavido vyavastam. I'm living this life, I'm going through this happiness and sorrow and so on. And by whose direction, by whose regulation am I actually going through all this? Am I going through suffering? I'm going through happiness in life. What on earth is all this? What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life? Is the first question that Shvetashvatara Rishi is asking in that Upanishads. And the Upanishads here, every Upanishad that you read, these are all the existential questions that is actually coming up in these Upanishads. Now, I would like to submit here, how many of us actually have time in our daily lives to even ask these questions? How many of us wake up in the morning and even ask about these fundamental questions? We are living in a state of denial. Either we deny ourselves to ask these questions, or we feel that these questions are too painful for us to deal with, that subconsciously we deny ourselves these questions. Or probably the more common explanation is, some of us, we do not even know that these questions exist. We do not even know that these questions exist, let alone finding out the answers. We do not even know that these questions exist. So the Svetashvatara, let's move on. So the Svetashvatara Rishi then puts himself various hypotheses to answer this question. This is beautiful. This is reasonable, considered hypothesis, and then proving why those hypotheses doesn't work. So for Kim Karanam, what is the original causation? Shvetashvatara Rishi puts himself a few hypotheses, and as a scientist we would all accept and agree that we come up with a hypothesis, then we do our experimentation, and then we either prove or disprove the hypothesis that we started with. So that is exactly what the Shvetashvatara Rishi does. He says Kalaha Swabhavo Niyati Yadricha Bhutani Yonihi Purusha iti Chintyam Natu Atma Bhavat Atma api anishaha sukadukka hetoho. So that is his logical inference from Kim Karanam. What is the original causation? First he takes Kalaha. Is this time? Is time the original causation of the universe? Because everything happens in time. We sleep in time, we get up in time. We are born at a particular time, we die at a particular time. So everything seems to be happening at a particular time. So the Svetashvatara is asking, is time the cause of the origin of the universe? And that particular time is also fascinating, because the modern physicist and the cosmologist still cannot grasp themselves as to what time is. What is the physics of time? Is it a real entity? Does it exist? Or is it something that we infer? So the whole physics of time is still being explored in modern science parlance, whereas our rishis have been asking that right from the beginning. Our rishis have accepted that time is an entity. Time is a real entity. So is this time? And then the rishi himself then goes on to say that time cannot be the cause of the universe. You know why? Because for any creation, you need three aspects. You need Icha Shakti, you need Jnana Shakti, and you need Kriya Shakti. There are three things that you need to create anything. Example, let's take a pot. So for a potter to create a pot, first he needs to have Jnana Shakti. So he needs to know how he needs to make a pot. Then he needs to have a desire to make a pot. Then he needs to go and make the pot. He needs to spin the wheel and he put a clod of mud and so he needs to have the Kriya Shakti. So all these three are fundamental requirements before a pot is created. And similarly, before a universe is created, all these three basic requisites are essential. And unfortunately, time is a inert thing. Time is not a conscious thing. So the three aspects, that is the Jnana Shakti, Icha Shakti and Kriya Shakti, can be only in a conscious thing, can only be in a conscious being or a sentient being. A non-living thing cannot have these three components. So Shvetashvatara eliminates that possibility. Time cannot be because it is an insentient or a non-living thing. So then he takes up Swabhavaha. Is this the inherent nature of a thing to get created? Is this the inherent nature of the point of singularity to go through Big Bang and create the universe? Is it the inherent nature of the three gunas that they mix together and create? And then he says, no, that is also not possible, because even these entities are non-living things. They are not sentient beings. They are not conscious beings. So it cannot be. Then he takes up, could this be niyati? It could be naturally. Can it happen naturally? Yeah, it is a natural for the Big Bang to happen. So it says naturally, can it all happen spontaneously? So the other word is spontaneously. Can it happen spontaneously? Again, that is not possible because this is inert. Then he takes up yadrucha. Yadrucha means accident. Did creation happen by accident? So this is a modern prevailing concept of cosmology, where the cosmologists believe that creation actually was an accident. Big Bang was an accident, and that's how creation came about. So Shvetashvatara Muni is asking this question, is this by accident? And Shvetashvatara Muni says, no, it cannot be by accident, because The universe is highly regulated. The universe is highly organized. The universe is complex with various laws of physics and science operating within the universe. So, how can something that is so orderly designed and regulated, how can that happen by accident? It cannot be. So, edricha he eliminates. Then he says, could this be bhutani yonihi? Could this be mixing up of all the five elements, the panchabhutas that we know? Could this be mixing up of these? Then he will again say, no, it's not possible, because if it has to mix, then somebody has to mix it. Without somebody mixing it, how can that mixing happen? Because bhutas are also inert, so that is also not possible. Then he comes, okay, so then maybe there is something conscious. Maybe is that Purushaha? Is it us as jivas? Maybe all these jivas put together, did we create the universe? So Purushaha, iti chintyam. So you think like this. So the Shvetashvara Upanishad thinks these various possibilities. Then he says, okay, all these things are not possible. Me as jivas are not possible. I'll come to it later why it is not possible. But then he says, samyoga esham. Is this mixing up of all these bhutas and the purushas, and somehow by accident universe came about? Again he discards that. Then he says it's not possible because natu atma bhavat. Jivas cannot create. Why? Atma api anishaha. Because jivas, we as jivas cannot create because we are not independent beings. If we are independent beings, we would not be suffering at this point of time. If we were the creators of the universe, then we would never create a universe that is filled with sorrow. We will create universe that is with full of bliss and happiness. And we are dependent beings. We do not control our own destiny. So when we cannot control our own destinies, how can we ever even think about creating this universe? Yeah. So the Shvetashvatara Muni is actually taking up various hypotheses and excluding them, and then finally he arrives at a conclusion and he says, if I have excluded all these possibilities as the cause of the universe, then it means there must still be a supreme conscious, independent, super conscious being that pervades every aspect from Kala to Atma, and that must be responsible for the creation of the universe. That is how he arrives at that conclusion for the very first question in the Shvetashvatara Upanishads. Then he goes on to say, if that is the supreme conscious being exists, then how is it possible to know that supreme conscious being is the next question. So the Shvetashvatara Rishi then goes on to say, te dhyana yoga anugataha apashyan. So what he concludes, he says, in deep meditation, you will realize that being that permeates the entire universe, who is the creator of the universe, is how the Rishi summarizes that. So what I'm trying to describe here is the approach in the Upanishads is not some senseless descriptions of some vague philosophical thought. It is a systematic reasoning and deduction based on hypothesis and experimentation in deep meditation that the Upanishad seer arrives at some fundamental truths. So taking up te dhyana yoga anugataha apashyan. So what is this dhyana yoga anugataha? So what does this deep meditation actually means? So if you go to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is a very beautiful discourse between Yajnavalkya, who was a great Vedic philosopher of those times, with Maitreyi. So Maitreyi and Yajnavalkya are having this discussion. Yajnavalkya is saying, Atmava are drashtavyaha, shrotavyo mantavyo, nitidhyasitavyaha. So he says, Atmava are drashtavyaha, God should be seen. That is the only mechanism for liberation. That is in that particular context, the discussion. God must be seen. When you see him, you will have your liberation. This is what Yajnavalkya is saying, Maitreyi. So then, what is the procedure for actually seeing such a God? So, Yajnavalkya says, Shrotavyo, Mantavyo, nitidhyasitavyo. So there are 3 steps towards your final point of where you are able to see God. So the first step is Shrotavya. So Shrotavya is when you actually listen and read and know about God. So Shrotavya literally means hearing. You hear from a teacher the scriptures and the higher knowledge. So Shrotavya is the preliminary step. Then once you have read something, then you revise, you contemplate and you revise so that you have a firmed up knowledge about what you have learned. So that is manana. So that is mantavyo. So once you have confirmed and firmed up knowledge, then you go into deep meditation. And what the deep meditation essentially does is stills your mind. So when the mind is still, then the jiva is able to look inwards towards God. So that is the step of knowing the ultimate truth. So the very first step there is Shrotavya, right? To read, to study, to know, to gain knowledge. So then the question arises, what is this knowledge? What is it that I need to know? And what type of things should I study? Is the next question that comes up. So this is again a discussion that happens in Atharvana Upanishad between Saunaka and Angirasa. So Saunaka asks, Kasminnu bhagavo vijñāte sarvamidam vijñātam bhavati, is what Saunaka is asking. So what is it that I need to know, by knowing which I know everything? Yeah. So Angirasa then replies, Tasmai saho vacha dve vidye veditavye para chaiva aparacha itihasmat brahmavido vadanti. So he says, my dear Saunaka, there are 2 types of knowledge. There is aparavidya and then there is paravidya. There are 2 types of knowledge. So what is paravidya? What is aparavidya? Aparavidya, he says, is material science. Paravidya is spiritual science. So those are the 2 modes of knowledge, 2 types of knowledge that exist out there. Material science and spiritual science. So then he says, what is material science and what is spiritual science? He goes and qualifies that. So he says, Yatra apara rigvedo yajurvedaha samavedaha atharvana vedaha siksha kalpo vyakaranam niruktam chando jyotishamiti. So 10 aspects, he says, this is material science, which is a shocker. I'll come to it later. So he said these are the 10 material science that exist out there. Ata para yaya tad aksharam adhigamyate. So what is spiritual science? Ata para yaya tad aksharam. Any text that gives you the knowledge of the akshara. Akshara means the supreme. Okay. Anything that gives you the knowledge of the supreme God is paravidya. Is the definition of what is material science and what is spiritual science. Now there is a confusion here. Angirasa has actually told Saunaka that Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, etc., the 10 of them are actually aparavidya. He has actually told that these are material sciences. Why did he say that? He said that because it all depends on your approach to it. If you look at the Vedas as primarily talking about sacrifices or primarily doing things for material wealth, do this puja for material wealth or do this thing for rain and so on, those kind of things that if you approach the Vedas in that angle, then it becomes a material science, it becomes an aparavidya. But if you approach the Vedas as a source of knowledge about the Supreme, then it becomes paravidya. So for example, Vedavyasa, that is the reason why Vedavyasa took incarnation. As I told you right in the beginning, Vedavyasa compiled the Vedas. Then he composed what is called as Brahma Sutras or Vedanta Sutras. Why did he compose the Brahma Sutra, the Vedanta Sutra? These are dictionaries or texts of interpretation. how do you understand and read the Vedas from a Paravidya angle? How do you extract knowledge from the Veda for spiritual science? You use the instrument called Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra to try and access the Vedas and understand what they are telling about the higher truths of life. Srimad Acharya, for example, in one of his magnus opus called Anuvyakyana, describes Brahma Sutra as Paravidyakyam Chakre Shastram Anuttamam. So he spends a lot of time talking about Vedanta Sutra because it is a key text that actually is the gateway to understand the knowledge within the Vedas or the Upanishads. So it is called Kevala Paravidya. Vyasa, who is Vishnu himself, has composed it, and we use this to understand Vedas so that we convert Vedas from material science to spiritual science. Okay, so that is another concept of how what is spiritual science and what is material science. Then you might ask the question, but how is it feasible? What are we doing in the modern life, for example? So in modern society, I think you would all agree with me if I say that 99.99% of what we study in school and university is Aparavidya, is material science. We are not studying spiritual science at all. We are studying about how the universe is operating. How can I make use of how the universe is operating for my own personal benefit? If iPad is there, the discovery of the iPad was made not to learn the higher truths, but for our own personal benefits. Yeah. So that is what we have done. 99.9% of the time, we are using Aparavidya to carry on with our lives. So I'm going to ask you the question, has our approach in life of focusing only on Aparavidya has actually made us happy? Can anybody in this room actually claim and tell me that their life is the best life and they have the most blissful existence on this planet with no problems, with no suffering? Can anybody put their hands in their heart and say that? I think the honest answer would be no. We all have our own sets of problems and sufferings that we endure and put up with our Aparavidya. So Aparavidya has not really given progress in our lives. So this is what Atharvana Upanishad again talks about. It talks about two birds in a tree. So it says, Dva Suparana Sayuja Sakaya Samana Vriksham Parishashva Jate Tayor Anyaha Pippalam Swadvati Anashnan Anyaha Abhichakashiti. It is describing our situation very beautifully. It is saying there is this tree, and in this tree there are all these bitter fruits. There are two birds in this tree. They are sitting in that nest, which is this heart. One bird is actually going around the tree, picking up all these bitter fruits and eating it and feeling extremely happy. It thinks that this bitter fruit is the sweetest thing that exists in existence, and it is eating this fruit and it's assuming it's happy. Whereas there is the second bird which is not doing anything. It is a silent witness. It is just sitting in that nest and it is just observing what this other bird is doing. This second bird is not eating anything, but it is always in a state of blissful existence, and it is just looking at this first bird and saying, what on earth is this guy doing? Assuming he is eating this bitter fruit and he feels he is happy. That is our position. How is our position? Samane vrikshe purusho nimagnaha Anishaya shochati muhyamanaha. So this bird is sitting in this tree and is going through this, but it is suffering. It is going through cycles of happiness and misery and happiness and suffering. And why is it suffering? Because it's powerless. It cannot even decide its destiny. It does not even know what is going to happen to its life in the next 1 hour. It does not even have an idea how things are going to pan out tomorrow. It is that bad it is. Its existence. Why is it that bad? Because it is focused more on the tree and its fruits. The tree is the universe, and the fruits is the benefits that we take away from this universe through our karma. Yeah. So we are just eating those fruits and we are suffering. So then the same Upanishad says, when does this sad situation of ours changes? The very next line it says, Jushtam yada pashyati anyamisham asya mahimanam iti vita shokaha. When that bird, instead of facing the tree and its fruits, it actually decides to face towards the other bird. When it turns its head and it faces inwards and starts knowing about that other bird, that is the only situation when it has a scope for its eternal existence and bliss. And how does it pursue? Jushtam yada pashyati anyam isham. That my controller is different from me. Anyam isham asya mahimanam. He is such a great being who controls me. Iti vita shokaha. It is until it reaches that point and understands this. When it reaches that point and it understands this, then it gets rid of all its suffering and achieves liberation. Is what Atharvana Upanishad is actually giving us a hint as to what is it that we need to be doing in our lives to move away from Aparavidya towards Paravidya. Okay, so I just want to pause a minute here and then take you back and say, okay, I've spoken this far about the various Upanishads, what is Paravidya, what is Aparavidya, and it all appears rather abstract and vague. Give me a couple of specific examples. Give me examples from my current situation where I am an alive, living being. Give me an examples from how the Upanishads are asking us to move away from Aparavidya to Paravidya. So what I want to do is, for the rest of my talk, over the next 25 minutes, is actually maybe take two examples. One from Keno Upanishad and one from Mandukya Upanishad, and then explain how we can actually, we as medical people, we as people of scientific mind, how can we actually apply what Upanishads is telling us in our day-to-day life. So the first one, I want to take you to this beautiful Upanishad in Samaveda. It's called Keno Upanishad. Keno Upanishad is also known as Talavakara Upanishad. Okay, so it's a very interesting Upanishad, which is a discourse between Shiva and Chaturmukha Brahma, and they are having this philosophical discourse. Okay, so Shiva is asking Chaturmukha Brahma this fundamental question. He's asking, Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha, kena pranaha pratamaha praiti yuktaha, Kene shitam vachyam imam vadanti, chakshu shrotram kavudevo yunakti. So he's asking this basic question. He's asking, Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha. He's asking, why does the mind operate like this? What is the origin of the mind? This is the first question of Shiva to Chaturmukha Brahma. So basically what Shiva is asking is, who am I? Am I this body? First question, who am I? Am I this body? So the answer that is, you are not this body, because when you are dead, you cannot see, hear, breathe and talk. So if you are this body, when the body is dead, you can't talk this. You can't talk, see and use your sense organs. So that itself tells you that you are not this body. So the next question is, am I the brain-mind complex? Am I the brain-mind complex rather than the body? So Chaturmukha is saying, no, you are not the brain-mind complex, because you are not the mind. You think through your mind. You are not the eyes. You see through your eyes. You are not the ears. You hear through your ears. You are not the vocal cords. You speak through your vocal cords. So these various sense organs that you have, they are instruments. They are not you. They are the instruments that you use to make contact with the external world. So then you go to the next levels of question. Then you ask the question, if I am not all these things, how did these come about? I'm just born. I was in my mother's womb for 9 months, and then I come out. And I have all these things on my face. I have my eyes, I have my nose, and I breathe and all that. So this is all happening spontaneously. I have had no influence on this. I did not create any of these sense organs. I was born with it. I'm using it with my for my activities of daily living. I've not even asked this fundamental question as to where did these sense organs come from? How am I using these sense organs? Who created it? Who regulates this? Am I regulating my mind? No, I have no control over my mind. My mind is constantly vacillating from one thought to another thought. I have no control over my mind. If I was in control of my mind, I would be such a good being, which I am not. So I don't have control over my mind. Who is regulating me with all this is the very first question that Shiva is asking. And Chaturmukha answers to him, Shrotasya Shrotram Manasa Mano Yadvachaha Vacham Savu Pranasya Pranaha Chakshushash Chakshuhu Atimuchya Diraha Pretya Asmad Lokad Amrita Bhavati. So that's the very next verse. Chaturmukha Brahman says, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manasa Mano. So he is inside your speech, that which is inside your mind, that which is inside your in your vocal cords, that which is inside your prana, pranasya pranaha. So that one, you think about that one who is a regulator of you. When you think of that, then you have scope for liberation. Pretya asmad lokad amrita bhavati. Pretya means when you shed your material body, then you have scope for material for liberation. So Shiva is asking you to ask this question. So this is what we use in our daily day-to-day transactions. We wake up, we are awake, and instantly we come down, we look at things, we hear, we talk to our spouse, and then we carry on with our lives. We are doing it at a spinal level. We just assume that it's all happening. Oh, it is there, I'm using it, I'm just getting on with life. But what the Upanishad is asking is, go down to the lower layers. Ask beneath that, why is it like this? Why am I using my eyes to see? Why does not my eyes hear? Why does my hearing hear but not see? Why does the mind does not speak? Why is it that things are arranged in such a way that this is what I do with this indriyas and this sense organs? Do I ask these questions? No, you don't. Ask those questions when you are in a wakeful state. Is what Shiva is Chaturmukha Brahma is actually telling Shiva. Now what I want to do is take you on to a bit more biological and medical aspects of what Upanishads are actually talking about. So we spoke about how we use our sense organs when we are in a wakeful state. So the Upanishads, for example, spend a lot of time talking about states of consciousness of living beings. It talks about various states of consciousness. So this is discussed in some great detail in Mandukya Upanishad, which is also called Manduka Upanishad, which forms part of the Atharvana Veda. So there, the Upanishad seer informs us and actually tells us, and this would resonate very beautifully with us, is the three states of consciousness of living beings when they are in material existence. So when they have a body and they are living in the material world, there are three states of consciousness. So the first state is called Jagrati state. The second state is called Swapna state. And the third state is called Sushupti. So what does that mean? Jagrati state means wakeful state, when we are awake. Swapna state is dreamful sleep. Sushupti is dreamless sleep. So you go and ask any neuroscientist of the states, these are all the three states. Wakeful states, dreamful sleep, dreamless sleep. You can call it as REM, NREM sleep, whatever, but it falls under these two categories of dreamful sleep, dreamless sleep. So our Upanishad seers, this is thousands of years ago, have already described these states of consciousness. So now the Upanishad seer talks to you about what is the Jagrati state? What is the Jagrati? Jagrati stanaha bahihi prajnaha Shaptangaha ekona vimshati mukaha pravivyukta buk Vaishwanaraha pratamaha padaha is the first mantra talking about the wakeful state. So what it says is, what is the wakeful state? It is called Jagrati state, where you are aware of the external world. So basically you have opened up your sense organs of what the Keno Upanishad was talking about, the discourse between Shiva and Chaturmukha Brahma. You have activated your sense organs. Your sense organs are in contact with the external world. Your mind is in contact with the sense organs, and you as a jiva is in contact with your mind. So there is a perfect alignment: jiva, mind, sense organs, external world. Okay, so this is Jagrati sthana. Now the philosophy there is, in the Jagrati sthana, our fundamental reason why we are in a state of constant misery and unhappiness in samsara is we have assumed independence of existence in our wakeful state. We have somehow assumed that we are the masters of our own destiny and that we are in complete control of what is happening in our lives. Because we have assumed that, we have gone through these vicious cycles of desires and anger and not getting, then you go into a mode of sorrow, and you go through this cycle that is described in the Bhagavad Gita. And the fundamental reason for that is we have assumed our sense of independence in the wakeful state. But the Upanishad fellow is saying, in the wakeful state, your state of consciousness, you are actually dependent. If you were independent, you will never suffer, but you suffer. So that itself tells you that you are dependent. And you are dependent on whom? And it says you are dependent on this form of God called Vaishwanaraha. And how does he work? He has 7 faces and he has 19 limbs. Shaptangaha, ekona vimshati mukaha shaptangaha. So 7 hands and 19 faces. Okay, and let's leave that aside. There is a huge philosophy behind why there is 7 arms and 19 faces. But just to say here that God in the form of Vaishwanaraha is controlling your wakeful state. Here is the interesting bit. The Upanishads philosopher says the Vaishwanara form of God is in a region close to the right eye. Essentially between the 2 eyebrows, he is in this place in a chakra called Agna chakra. Okay, this corresponds to the pineal gland. This is what the seer has said. Where the pineal gland is called the Agna chakra, where the Vaishwanara form of God sits there and controls your wakeful state. Okay, so now we all know from the pineal gland, what does the pineal gland do? It secretes melatonin. And what does the melatonin do? It regulates sleep and wakeful cycles. Okay, the Upanishad philosopher has told you this already. In which Upanishad? I've just told you the Upanishad that comes in Atharvana Veda, which is Mandukya Upanishad. He has described the pineal gland, Agna chakra, Vaishwanara form of God is there. Then he says, then you know what? You come home after work, 10:39, you finish your TV, then you want to go to bed. Then you're slowly going to drift to bed. Okay? Then you drift to bed, you go into a dream state of sleep. Okay? So what is happening in the dream state of sleep? Your sense organs' contact with the external world is gone. The mind is still active. The contact between the soul and the mind still exists, whereas the contact between the mind and the sense organ is lost. Okay? He defines this is the dream state. So what is happening in the dream state is akin to a cinema theater. So you have a screen, somebody is putting the movie, and you are the person who is sitting in that theater and you are observing that movie. So basically, there is the chemical reactions that is happening in the brain. The jiva is sitting and is observing these chemical reactions. Okay? Okay. The question is, who is initiating and controlling and making those chemical reactions? Okay. The Upanishad philosopher says there is this form of God called Tejasa. Tejas, a form of God who controls this. So he says, Swapnastanaha Antaha Prajnaha Saptangaha Ekona Vimshati Mukhaha Pravivikta Book Tejaso Dvitiya Padaha. So that is the second form of Lord in your dreamful states. His name is called Tejasa. Tejasa means light. So basically he's saying he's projecting this light like a cinema theater on the brain. And you as a spectator is observing that. Okay. So here is the interesting bit. The philosopher then says, in the dream state, in the wakeful state, the Vaishwanara form of the Lord was near the pineal gland. Now he moves to the middle of the neck into your thyroid gland. Okay. He comes here, Vishuddhi Chakra. He comes to this place and he sits there and he projects this dream into your mind. So now, the text is very clear as to where precisely God is present during the dream state in the thyroid gland. So now, from a medical perspective, we all know that there is a strong link between thyroid gland, thyroxine, and the functioning of the mind and the functioning of the brain. Dysfunctions of the thyroid gland, for example, the things that commonly symptoms of thyroid gland dysfunctions is sleep disturbances, sleep disorders, anxiety, depression, and in fact, we all know that there is an entity called the myxedema madness, which is a disorder of the mind. So there is clearly a link between the thyroid gland and mind. And again, to me, it looks like from a medical perspective, the Upanishad seer has been right all along, linking thyroid gland with the mind. Let's move on. Then he goes to the third stage, which I find incredibly fascinating. So the third stage is the Sushupti state. Sushupti state it's a dreamless sleep, okay, which is NREM or REM sleep, one of those. Okay, that is a dreamless sleep. So what is happening in the dreamless sleep? The mind's contact with the sense organ doesn't exist. Sense organs contact with the external world doesn't exist, and the jiva's contact with the mind also does not exist. There is a temporary cessation of this contact to the jiva with the mind with the sense organs with the external world. Now, if I told you in the wakeful state we are totally dependent, but because we have assumed independence, we are going through suffering. Okay? In the dream state, obviously we are dependent because we cannot control our dreams. Can we control our dreams and say, I want to see Katrina Kaif in my dream today? No, it's not going to happen. So we do not control our dream, clearly. So Sushupti state is a classic example of how dependent we are. In a dreamless sleep is when burglars come into your house. Is exactly the situation when the burglar comes into your house and steals things, because you're totally not in contact with the external world. You are lying there listlessly in total dependence. We don't realize that we are in total dependence. So, number one, we are in a total dependent state. What else is happening? You are in total ignorance of the external world. Yes? The Upanishads here then tells you, in that state, what actually happens is, you are aware of time and space, you are in close proximity with the Supreme, and you actually experience a very blissful state. How do I know this? Because when I wake up, I would say, I slept very well. I would say I slept blissfully last night for so long. So when you are awake, you realize that you are in a you slept very well in deep sleep. Okay. The interesting position about the Sushupti state is, although we are in close proximity with the Supreme, we do not realize that we are in close proximity of the Supreme. We have still that ignorance that we are not in the close proximity of the Supreme. We are ignorant of that, but still we experience bliss, which we realize when we wake up. Okay, so this is the state of the Sushupti, which again informs you as to how dependent you are in the Sushupti state. Okay. Now, here is a very interesting bit that I found out over the last few weeks and I would like to share with you. Now, the jiva, the soul, we all know from Acharya's philosophy and Vedic philosophy that jiva is atomic, subatomic. Okay? Shvetashvatara Upanishad actually talks about what is the size of the jiva. It take a white horse, take the horse tail, take the smallest of the horse tail and the tip of the horse tail divided by 1,000. That is the size of the jiva, is what the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it gives you a dimension of the jivas. Where is the jiva present? In the body. Okay. The philosophy is very clear. Vedic philosophy says jiva is present in what is called Hridaya Kamala. It says there is inside your chest, there is an inverted lotus. In that inverted lotus, there is a small cave. In that cave, the jiva is present. So, that inverted lotus is the thymus gland. It is not the four-chamber heart. It is the thymus gland. Inside the thymus gland is supposed to be a cave, a tiny cave, where the jiva is supposed to reside. The jiva doesn't move. It is always in the thymus gland. The self is always in the thymus gland. Whereas the three forms of God moves from Vaishvanara state to the Tejasa state to the Prajna state. Okay. Now, the question is, why did the Upanishads here say that the self is in the thymus? Okay. So, when I was thinking about this problem, suddenly I had this idea. What is the function of the thymus during embryogenesis and the development of the immune system? The fundamental function of the thymus is to determine self antigens and discriminate from self to non-self antigen. So the concept of selfhood, of the immune system is based in the thymus gland. Okay. Perhaps it was not a coincidence that the sense of selfhood or the jiva, which is our self, the Upanishad philosopher has also seen that selfhood in the thymus. Anyway, putting that aside, so these are the three states of consciousness that the Upanishad seer is talking about, and I think it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense with us as medical individuals of scientific biological beings who ask about biological questions, and I haven't seen anything contradictory to what we know from modern medical science of the three states of consciousness. But what the Upanishads here is asking to do is, just don't see it as a material science. See it as a spiritual science, because what you need to realize is, in all these three states of consciousness, actually you are a completely dependent being. You're completely dependent on some supernatural power for your existence, is what it's trying to. It's giving you a clue to ask the deeper questions so that then you can make philosophical progress. Now, we are still dwelling on the states of consciousness. Now, the same Upanishad then says, you know what? Actually, there is a fourth state of consciousness. This fourth state of consciousness is called the Turiya state. This is the state of consciousness that you achieve when you are liberated. When you have attained moksha, when you have liberated, when you have shed your material body, your jiva attains that state of consciousness. And the seer says, so what is that fourth state of consciousness? He says, that state, na antaha prajnam, na bahihi prajnam, na ubayataha prajnam, na prajnanaganam, na prajnam, na aprajnam. So it tells you that state of consciousness in 6 different negative situations. He says, that state of consciousness is not the state of consciousness as when you were in dream. That state of consciousness is not the state of consciousness that you were when you were awake. That state of consciousness is not that when you are daydreaming. Daydreaming is called ubayataha prajnam. You're both dreaming and you're also awake. So that is called Ubayataha Prajnam. Okay. So daydreaming, it is not a daydreaming. Prajnanaganam. Prajnanaganam means dreamless sleep. It is not a dreamless sleep. Then na prajnam. Prajnam means in deep meditation. When you are in deep meditation, it says it is neither that, and it is not apragnam. Apragnam is no consciousness. It is not that as well. It is a different type of consciousness. I cannot describe to you what that fourth level of consciousness is. That is for you to experience. You need to attain that state to experience that fourth state of consciousness. Okay, and then it says, even in that fourth state of consciousness, it is the supreme that actually controls even your fourth state of consciousness in liberation. So, our philosophical journey and quest should basically be that we use our situation in life when we are existing as living beings to understand the states of consciousness and then try and elevate ourselves and reach that fourth state of consciousness. So that is the fourth Purusha, Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Okay. So the philosopher is actually telling you, if you want to reach that Purushartha of Moksha, you will reach that level of consciousness which is nothing like what you are experiencing here. It is completely different. I cannot explain what it is. You have to experience it yourself, is what you are saying. But then the question arises, how can I actually reach that state? So then I want to bring you back to Shrotavyaha, Mantavyaha, Nitidhyasitavyaha. So you need to start your philosophical journey. You need to start studying to know these fundamental truths. Then you can eventually, not in this life, maybe in several lives from now, one might reach that state. So that Shrotravyaha again is another concept that I want to bring in and then finish off my talk, is to talk about this concept of Om. And this syllable Om is quite popular in our tradition, and we say Om for everything. Basically, Om can be a word Om, or it can be separated into three, AUM, or it can be separated into four components, Akara, Ukara, Makara and Nada, or it can be separated into 8 components, Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada, Bindu, Shanta, Kala, Atishanta. So 8 components. So the philosophers go and break down Om in various components to bring in subtle philosophical truths. So how is it relevant to our states of consciousness? So the 4 consciousness, Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada, corresponds to Vaishwanara, Tejasa, Prajna and Turiya forms. So these 4 states of consciousness is what is actually summarized by Om. So every time when you recite Om, think about what Om actually stands for. Om stands for these 4 states of consciousness. What are the names of the Lord that controls these 4 states of consciousness? As we said, Vaishwanara, Tejasa, Prajna and Turiya. What are the other names of these forms? Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. What are the 4 names of those? Krishna, Rama, Narasimha, Varaha. Okay, and Srimad Acharya, for his 4 disciples, what did he give them? Krishna, Rama, Narasimha and Varaha. Why did Srimad Acharya had Ashtamatas? Because Omkara has 8 components to it. So he made 8 matas. And for each his disciples, he either gave Krishna, Rama, Narasimha or Varaha. These are all for these truths. So then we understand, Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Turiya, you understand Vaishwanara, Turiya, Prajna, and Vaishwanara, Tejasa, Prajna and Turiya. And then you understand Jagrati Sthana, Swapnasthana, Shushuptisthana and Turyasthana. So to know this, you can really see how the Om is coming. Now, Shrotavyadini, how does the Vedas fit into it? Akara is Rig Veda, Ukara is Samaveda, Yajurveda, Makara is Samaveda, Nada is Atharvana Veda. Or Vedas themselves can be divided into three: Padya, Gadya, and Gana. So, any form of human communication can be only in three forms. Either it can be in poetry, or it can be in prose, or it can be in music. So, Akara. What is the very first word of Rigveda? What is the very first mantra of Rigveda? Agnimile Purohitam. A. Akara is the very first letter of Rigveda. Okay. How does Rigveda end? Okay. Samudro Sati. That's the last letter is E of Rigveda. If you take Yajurveda, what is the very first mantra of Yajurveda? Ishetvar Jetva. Okay. What is the last letter of Yajurveda? Samudro Bandhuhu. U. Okay. So Rigveda started with A, Yajurveda ends with U. Okay. Samaveda is what? Rig and Yajur set in music. So how do you say music? Okay. So the Makara there gives you the knowledge about music. So again, when you say Om, you know that the entire Vedas are compressed in that letter Om. It's one of those USB sticks kind of stuff, wherein Om, everything is compressed in it. So the word Om achieves great significance in Mandukya Upanishad, where the philosopher actually starts at a biological level and he ends at a philosophical level and tells and gives you a direction and path towards achieving your liberation. So we are coming to the final stages of what I want to share with you today. Is again I want to come to this concept of Upanishads or the source of wealth of information. There is nothing that exists in Upanishad that exists elsewhere. Everything that exists elsewhere is available in the Upanishads. Science, maths, astronomy, biology, psychology, whatever you want is available in the Upanishads. If you see it as a material science or an aparavidya. If you see it as a paravidya, you can use this as an instrument for your elevation. So Srimad Acharya, for example, will remind you at this point, saying that whenever you are dwelling yourselves in material science, when you are in mundane material existence, just don't dwell on this. Always think about, if this universe is so wonderful, if this universe is so great, always remind yourself how wonderful must be the creator of this universe. If this universe itself is wonderful, how wonderful must the creator be? So in Dwadasha Stotra, for example, you say Bahuchitra Jagat Bahuda Karanat Parashaktihi Ananta Gunaihi Paramaha. So remind yourself as to how great that creator should be when you understand the mundane world. So finishing off finally, again Srimad Acharya reminds us, at the end of the day you might learn a lot of Paravidya. You may start off with Aparavidya, then you go into spiritual science. But just because you have studied spiritual science does not mean that you will achieve liberation. Okay? He will remind us, Ato Narayana Prasadambrute na mokshaha, nacha jnanam vina atyartha prasadaha, ato brahma jignasa kartavyaha. So it is Narayana's grace only that will give you liberation. Narayana's liberation, grace will be available only when you know about him. Only when you gain knowledge about him, then you have any scope of his grace. To get his knowledge, you need to do Brahma Jignasa. You need to do your studies. So to study, what do you need? You go back to the very first mantra that I cited from Atharvana Veda, which is Badram Karanebihi Shruniyama Devaha, Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Rejatraha, Stirair Angair Tushtuamsastanobihi Vyeshema Devahitam Yadahu. So what does the Rishi is actually saying? Give me good eyes so that I can only see the good things. I can only read books. Give me good ears so that I can only hear good things. Give me strong hands and legs so that I can be healthy and I can gain knowledge. Okay, so that I can use this as an instrument to elevate myself so that I really have self-realization and then God realization, and achieve immortality with eternal bliss. Okay, so I'll stop there. Thank you for listening. Krishna Pranamastu.
Very nice.